welcome to this session from High-Level Coder, and in this session we are going to understand how we can build a full stack, very simple application with a React front end and a Spring Boot based backend. And this combination of React and Spring Boot are one of the most sought after skill sets in today's software industry. So again, that's going to be a very high-level skill set. So this is going to be a 3-part series where in this part I'm going to show you how you can build the backend. Then the next part I will show you how to build the front end, and in the third part I'm going to show you how you can communicate between the front end and the backend, but all for a very simple application. So once we are able to build this very simple application, then you can build more complex application because the basic principle still stays the same. So, but before we go there, let's first quickly understand the architecture of the full stack application. The architecture of the full stack application is something like this. The front end part basically is composed of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, maybe one JavaScript framework, like one of the most popular frameworks, which is React. And the front end part runs in its own server. And the back end part may be built using JavaScript or maybe built using Java. If it is in Java, then in using one of the most popular Java frameworks, which is Spring Boot. And again, the database will be in another machine. So the front end is in one system, the back end is running and exposing its REST web services in another system, and the back end is actually using the database to store the data or to fetch any data, and the database itself is also running on another system. So this is the overall structure of a full stack application. And as I mentioned, that this is a 3-part series where we are going to develop a very basic full stack application with React as the front end and Spring Boot as the back end. And as you can see, that the React front end will send HTTP request to the Spring Boot REST endpoint, and the Spring Boot backend is going to send back HTTP response to the React front end. So we are going to develop a very simple page like this, which you see here, where I'm going to search the profile detail of a specific customer, and then the React front end is going to send a HTTP request to the Spring Boot backend to retrieve the detail, and based on that, the React front end would show the response. So in this video, we are going to develop the basic backend, which is the Spring Boot based backend. Now, before we go further and I show you the demo, let me quickly request you one thing. If you like my video, like my explanation, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel and watch my other videos also, because that would motivate me. And let me know if you have any comments or any special request for any video. And also another thing which I would like to request you is, please do not be frustrated if you do not get everything in one go, because that's completely natural. So at least try to understand the overall architecture, the overall skeleton. It is perfectly fine, and it is advisable that if you are a starter, you do not get the nitty-gritties of every single detail, because I had done the same mistake initially. So initially try to get the overall scheme of things, the overall architecture, copy the code and try to run the backend and the front end code separately, try to make the connection. But please do not be frustrated if you do not understand every single aspects of front end and backend. So with that said, let's go ahead and see the Spring Boot based backend demo. How to set up the Spring Boot based backend server? Please go to this URL, github.com/my username, and then to this particular repository, High-Level Coder backend, and go to branch -1, and this branch contains the code for this demo, and you can run the code exactly following the instructions here. So I'm going to follow the instructions, and so first I'm going to do a git clone and get my branch. Okay, so git clone is done. Then I'm going to go within that folder and then do first I'm going to set JDK and Maven. Now a couple of things, if you are still not very comfortable with GitHub, then please see my other video on GitHub. And if you are not very comfortable setting up Java in your laptop, please see my other video how you can set up your laptop for coding in Java, and also on the path environment variable on setting the path, and also see my other video over there about using Maven for any Java project. Okay, so with that said, we have set up Maven and JDK in my system so that I can compile. So I will use the command again, mvn clean package, to compile, and then I'm going to run it. It's going to run the Spring Boot server. So it has compiled the Spring Boot application, and then it is going to now start the Spring Boot server. Yes, so it has started the Spring Boot server. The Spring Boot server has started on port 8080. So what we can do is, now we will do a request to this endpoint, to this REST endpoint which we had developed in Spring Boot. So we'll create a new, we'll start a new shell, and I'll do a curl. Yes, so it has given a response back. So that means that endpoint is working. Let me use some other name which does not exist. So it has given a HTTP 500, which means it's an error. So now let us go and see the code for this. We will open the code in Visual Studio. One moment for that. So this is the code. If you see the code here, again, please do not worry if you do not understand everything. So this is the controller, which is the outermost layer, and it exposes these endpoints here, and then it also accepts a customer name, and then like in controller I am injecting a service, so it's calling the service layer which is here. So this is a service, and the service is again calling the DAO layer which will get the data. Now for this example, for this demo, it is not actually getting the data from database, rather I have got two profiles hard coded, so with the name Peter and Danny. So if you give these two names, then it should be able to respond back, but if you give some other name, then it will not find, of course, and then it will throw an error. So that's the simple thing, and here is the code which starts the Spring Boot application. So if you do not understand the entire part of the Spring Boot application, please do not worry. And for this moment, what I would request you is, you clone the code, you are able to start the Spring Boot server, you are able to compile and start the Spring Boot server, even that should be fine. So that's it. I hope the session was useful. You should be able to download the code, to clone the code from this repo and from this branch, following the instructions, able to compile the code and run the Spring Boot server. And please do not worry if you do not understand everything at this moment. At least if you are able to get the Spring Boot server up and running and able to invoke the endpoint and get response back, I think that is a very good start. And but please go ahead and try doing that, and you can always let me know by commenting if you have any questions, suggestions. And last but not the least, and again, if you like my explanation and video, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and also share my video with your other friends, and also like my other video, look at my other video and provide me feedback, because that is going to motivate me further. Thank you very much.